welcome to Collider Movie Talk for movie fans. I'm your host, Natasha Martinez, and this is the daily show where we give you all the latest news in the world of movies, plus some insight into what it all means. Joining us today is John Campea.
Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, coming to you from right here at the Collider Video Studios here in Burbank, California. Hulk leaving the MCU. Who knew?
Also joining us, Mark Ellis.
Thor's hair is leaving the MCU. Will it ever come back?
Also joining us, Kristian Harloff.
This is not a joke, you two.
All right, guys. Well, listen, as happens sometimes, a couple of things have dropped right before we started the show today. So, Natasha, what's going on today?
At CinemaCon in Las Vegas Tuesday evening, Dave Hollis, head of distribution for the Walt Disney Studios, revealed the Wreck-It Ralph sequel's title, Ralph Breaks the Internet, Wreck-It Ralph 2. Hollis also told attendees that Jane Lynch and Jack McBrayer will be reprising their roles from the 2012 movie, joining already announced John C. Reilly and Sarah Silverman. Directors Phil Johnson and Rich Moore are also returning with the release date set for March 9th, 2018. John, what are your thoughts on the title for Wreck-It Ralph 2?
It's about effing time. I mean, we've been waiting. This is a movie they should have fast-tracked into sequel world, like, immediately. I loved Wreck-It Ralph. The fact that it did not win Best Animated Picture today is still one of the biggest jokes that ever happened at the Academy Awards. This movie was great. This cast of characters were great. Ralph as a character is wonderful. Vanellope is wonderful. The villains were wonderful. It's a great world, and it's definitely a place you need to move back to. Now, we heard for some time that if they move forward with the Wreck-It Ralph 2, they would probably move it into the world of online gaming, which this title, Wreck-It Ralph, Ralph Breaks the Internet, I think that's great. I love this news. I just wish it came a little sooner. What do you think about it?
I love it. I don't know how much sooner it could have come, though, without it being too rushed, because I think with animated, it takes a little longer as far as the process goes. So normally, I mean, this is still pretty fast-tracked, considering when was the first one was, what, 2014?
Sure,
I think
no,
13.
before that, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it still between three years? I mean, I think Frozen's not coming out for another, or Frozen 2 for another 30 years.
Actually, 2012 is when it came
2012. All right, I mean, really?
It'll be 6 years.
2012.
Well, 5.5 years in between.
Wow, all right,
movies,
well,
yeah.
I still, I mean, the fact that we're getting it, I'm excited about it. I love the title. I think that it makes sense. I think that it being able to evolve into online gaming is the way to go. The fact that they're playing off the Breaks the Internet quote is great. I can't wait. I love that everybody's coming back. Doesn't seem like we're losing anybody. So I'm very excited and encouraged that we got everybody back, and I think that they know how beloved that the first one was, and I think that it's gonna be good.
Yeah, it's a great title, and the sequel may not have been fast-tracked, but the nostalgia for the first movie was, because people already get like, oh, I remember Wreck-It Ralph. It's like, really? It was 5 years ago. And then you start thinking about it, it's like, yeah, that was a long time. It feels like ages ago that I had dreams and care in my heart, and a lot of that was because of Wreck-It Ralph in 2012. It was a really fun movie, primarily nostalgia-based, and so here, when you take it to the next level with online gaming and getting immersed into those huge worlds, which is why some people who love playing the video games that we saw in the first Wreck-It Ralph stop playing, is because it's so time-consuming and it's so world-building heavy. We can have fun with that. We can lampoon that, and we can still have some older characters come in and join the fun. So hearing the cast, hearing the directors are back, this is all goodwill towards Wreck-It Ralph 2 so far. I think it's a great title, and I love how the logo kind of looks like the YouTube logo. That's funny to me.
That works. All right, what's next?
A new trailer for the Fifth Element filmmaker Luc Besson's sci-fi epic Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets has been released online. Based on the long-running French comic Valerian and Laureline, the film stars Cara Delevingne and Dane DeHaan as special operatives for the government of the human territories charged with maintaining order throughout the universe. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets opens in theaters on July 21st. Mark, what are your thoughts on the new trailer for Luc Besson's Valerian?
Natasha, I buy it based on all the pretty colors I saw. I wasn't expecting that from this trailer. I thought it was going to be dark and gloomy and depressing. It was a fun trailer. Are the effects the best I've ever seen? No. Am I a little worried about some of the acting? Sure. I don't really know where the story goes, but seeing these two leads, seeing Cara and Dane together, having fun with this adventure, it was like a breezy Star Trek meets Hellboy. The imagination that it takes to pull off just this trailer really impressed me. So I have no expectations going into this movie, or this trailer for that matter. That's probably why I enjoyed watching it, is that if this was something that I was really looking forward to, I might have very different glasses on. But just as somebody who wasn't aware of this property before it was announced, seeing this trailer, I had fun with it.
This trailer sucks.
Okay. Okay.
I just don't know where to go. It looks like beautiful garbage. It looks like absolutely beautiful garbage. It seemed the trailers from now, once again, I don't know how, I'm not making a commentary on how good or bad I think the movie is going to be. Not at all. I'm just talking about the trailer. it seemed like all concept, no meat. And the fact that Cara Delevingne is in this actually is a big concern for me. That's a huge red warning flag for me because I did not like her performance in Suicide Squad as much as as much as I enjoyed Suicide
but she was
Squad.
great in Paper Towns, and we have the
was.
same eyebrows.
I thought she was
Yeah.
okay in Paper Towns, and I don't. Right now, it just seems like all concept, little substance at this point. I'll wait to see more trailers as they come. I am looking forward to seeing the movie because I like the graphic novel, so I'm looking forward to seeing the movie. I like the director behind all that kind of stuff. But if we're just talking about the trailer, it doesn't do anything to give me any more hope. What do you think?
I think I'm a little bit in between with you guys because I didn't think it was hot garbage or beautiful garbage, as you say. But I also didn't have as much fun with it as Mark did. I think that I'm hoping for what Luc Besson's going for with, because I really enjoy The Fifth Element. I do, and I think that that's kind of what he's going for here. I think Dane DeHaan is someone who hasn't popped the way that he should because he is an incredible
He's
actor.
insanely
He's really
gifted.
good. Place Between the Pines is one of my favorite movies in general, and one of my favorite performances from him. He's also great in Chronicle and other things, obviously Lawless. But this is a movie that could be a breath of fresh air with new sci-fi fantasy, but it could also be exactly what you're talking about. I didn't get that in the trailer, but I could see the concern for sure. I could see because Luc Besson really hasn't hit recently, and that concerns me. But I also like the fact that he's able and willing to take chances, and this is obviously a big chance. It's a big risk. It's a big budget for the fact that it's a property that not very people are familiar with. They're not two big known stars, and I applaud him for trying that, and I hope that it is good. But the trailer was just kind of like, okay, I want to see it because of what it is and what the genre is, but I don't know if I'm rushing out to see it.
All right, let's get to our first official story of the day. What's up?
Sony and Marvel did an unprecedented thing by announcing they would be sharing Spider-Man and placing him officially in the MCU. With Homecoming dropping in July, along with a confirmed appearance in Avengers Infinity War, talk is already looking towards the future of Spidey and his place in the MCU. But there might be a wrinkle in those long-term plans. Speaking at CinemaCon via CosmicBookNews, Amy Pascal surprised fans by saying that after the sequel to Homecoming, Spidey might go back to Sony. One of the things that I think is so amazing about this experience is that you don't have studios deciding to work together to make a film very often. In fact, it may never happen again after we do the sequel. John, could Spider-Man go back to Sony after the Homecoming sequel?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a couple things to keep in mind here. Number one is that it's not really would Spidey go back to Sony. He's still Sony's. Spider-Man is still Sony's. They just happen to let him in the MCU. But by all rights, he still is Sony's property. They can do that. Look, when they signed this deal, it was not an infinite deal. It wasn't now forever and all time we will share these characters. No, it was for a limited number of films. Of course it would be. Any deal you make is going to be for a limited time, and then when that time expires, you have a decision to make. Do we continue? Do we go back? Just because the deal has an expiry on it doesn't mean they're not going to renew the deal. As of right now, all Amy Pascal was saying right now, before we panic too much, is just that she just pointed out the fact that after the Spider-Man sequel, after the Homecoming sequel, some people online were worrying that she was talking about after Homecoming. No, it's very definitively after the Homecoming sequel, which will be after Infinity War, and then probably after Avengers Part 4, and then we're probably going to have the Spider-Man sequel. So it's still a long ways away. All she was pointing out was that the deal is done after that movie. She did not say we are then going to move him entirely out of the MCU back to Sony, nor did she say we are going to renew it. It's just one or the other. But let's look at the possibilities. Can Sony, at the end of this deal, yank Spider-Man out of the MCU? Yes. But before anybody gets too riled up about that, Marvel knew this when they signed the deal. Sony knew this when they signed the deal. And I guarantee you that Marvel, before they signed that deal, they already came up with 5 contingency plans. Okay. If we renew this deal, this is what we're going to do with Spider-Man. And if Sony and us don't renew this deal, this is how we're going to write Spider-Man out of our MCU. So this was something that Sony knew long in advance. This is something that Marvel knew long in advance. They're both prepared for it. But there's I'm not going to say no way. I find it very unlikely that either Marvel or Sony won't re-up this deal when the time comes. I think just from the anticipation for Spider-Man Homecoming, you can see the fans are excited about it. Sony's going to benefit from this huge. Marvel's going to benefit from this huge. I just find it at this point very unlikely that they're not going to renew the deal, even though it is very possible. I know, first of all, Kristian, when you look at this, what do you even think of the possibility of them leaving? And then do you think that's something that would actually get triggered?
Well, the first thing is that I agree with everything that you just said, but someone from Sony needs to run up to Amy Pascal and go, shh, stop that. It's like she went up to a bee's nest and started smashing it with a hammer. It's like, what are you doing? Don't even get us started. Don't even get the internet started. Everything you're saying is absolutely 100% correct. There's too much money to be had in the long term for them not to say, okay, wait a minute, Spider-Man Home, we don't know the numbers yet at Homecoming, but it's going to crush. And then if it delivers the way we hope it will, Part 2 will crush. The fact that he's going to appear in Avengers is going to be big for them. It would be silly for them down the line to not at least revisit the chance to re-up this deal. Those conversations will happen. They will also help their franchise in order to do that because it has been benefiting the character, to which you pointed out, they still own. However, don't talk about it. Don't bring it up right now because we know that whether it's a negotiating tactic this early would be silly. Why would you even say something like that? And because you know that the way everyone gets on the internet, because everyone right away goes, well, I heard it. I'm like, wait a minute, what? With all this news with Venom and everything else, that they just want to separate it completely now. They're making their strides, and I started to do what a lot of people are doing. And there was absolutely no reason for her to kick the hornet's nest right now for no reason at all. It was silly.
In Amy Pascal's defense, although I agree with you, I do. In her defense, to play devil's advocate for a second, I think the point she was trying to make, just made it poorly, was how great and unbelievable this deal was. And then she just slipped in that part of like, we may never see it happen
right,
again.
But she's not a small-time producer.
She should have
she was
thought
someone
about
in
her wording.
in the power position, and it's one of the reasons I think that she's not anymore is because of things like this. You can't do things like this because it's a small slip. And I understand. I agree with you. I think that she had started off saying it was really cool that two studios got to come together. Okay, what's next? That's how it should have ended.
End of sentence.
That's how it ended, and it might never happen again after the sequel. Huh? It's like, no.
Okay, Mark, what about you? First of all, what do you think about the comments? And number two, honestly, what do you think the chances are that maybe after MCU, maybe Sony's got other plans for it? Like, what do you think?
I think that we are so spoiled as movie fans that we're wondering whether Spider-Man is going to be in an MCU movie 2 films from now. Like, how spoiled do you have to be to not just get excited about all these movies we have coming at us, but to look 5 or 10 years into the future and worry about that crap. If you're gonna do it, the only reason I see for her to make that comment is maybe to back up what this Venom announcement means and the possibility of a Sinister Six movie, and saying like, hey, yeah, we have a standalone Venom movie. It's not going to be a part of the MCU, but don't worry, Spider-Man could also be in that because there's no guarantee that he will continue in the MCU, and I think that's accurate. If Homecoming crushes on its own and the sequel does, then they will have the opportunity to sit back and say, we want to put this character in our other standalone movies like a Venom movie or a Sinister Six or whatever else you want to do with that, and we don't have to worry about him being in the MCU. But yes, they're obviously going to sit down at a table and revisit these discussions after Infinity War happens. That's kind of a given because they've been playing very nice with each other to this point. So I don't really read into these comments other than they're keeping their options open, which is fine. They just had a great trailer. They announced a Venom movie. You should keep your options open. I don't think it's that bad to put it there out loud for everybody to see.
Now, you throw a curveball in here. Here's an interesting thing to keep in mind. So you have Holland.
Cody Hall.
Cody Hall is another. So you have Tom Holland, who's our new Spider-Man. He has a 6-movie deal to play Spider-Man. 3, this is coming from his own mouth. 3 of which are for Spider-Man standalone movies, 3 of which are for other films. 1 has already been Captain America Civil War. We can assume that the other 2 are going to be those Avengers films. After Spider-Man Homecoming, he's got 2 standalone Spider-Man films still on the books. But the Marvel deal ends after the second one. Now, his contract, for anybody who's trying to keep score, is actually not with Marvel. His contract for a 6-film deal is with Sony. So, in signing for 3 standalone Spider-Man films, but only having 2 standalone Spider-Man films on the books to be a part of the MCU, Was this Sony planning ahead
Just
for making
distancing?
sure they got him under another one in case they want to move his Spider-Man into their own standalone universe? I mean, how much does this muddy the waters, this whole Tom Holland deal?
It's too early to say. I mean, it really is too. I think that you're right. I think it protects them. It has them now if they want to. Because let's say Homecoming doesn't do very well, and they want to separate right after the second sequel. They're like, look, these two aren't working for us. Him in the MCU is not working for this version of Spider-Man, so we're going to choose to move ahead, which is unlikely, but it gives them the option with those pictures that they have Tom Holland signed for. But the same is if they have it and then they put another deal together with Marvel to say, okay, well, we've got Holland for this amount of films. Let's do another one together. Let's do a third one together. Holland will include that in our Sony deal and part of the Marvel deal too. It's just negotiating, and they have something to sweeten the pot.
Right, which is why I don't think that negotiation tactic, if it was that by Amy Pascal's comments, was in error. I think it was actually a smart thing for her to make these comments on the basis that we don't know, however unlikely the scenario may sound right now, after Infinity War, Sony might have the upper hand because they have Spider-Man, and he's a young guy, and he can keep playing Spider-Man for a while, whereas we don't know what the future Robert Downey Jr. is going to be as Iron Man. We don't know what the future Chris Evans is going to be as Captain America, or Hemsworth as Thor, or any of these other characters. So after Infinity War, if Marvel has to start rebuilding its universe a little bit, Sony can be like, we don't want to play in that sandbox. We're just going to make our own movies with Spider-Man because our first two have been very successful. And if they're not that successful, they can come back to the negotiating table with Marvel and say, hey, the first deal worked out well. Let's continue this. So I think it works for them either way.
I don't think it's that easy, though. I think because Spider-Man, after Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man 2, Sony was on the ropes. Like one punch in the head from being knocked out, losing Spider-Man on the ropes. Like they could have tried to do it again, but the fans were starting to get sick of what Sony was doing with Spider-Man. I just can't believe that it's that easy of a deal with Marvel. Like, oh, we just want them in 2 films or maybe 4 films, and then you guys can just have them again. I just can't. I don't buy it. It's possible, but I think that there's more to that deal with Marvel. They got a little bit more say in certain movies and certain ways that the character is represented. They saved Spider-Man again. Putting him in Civil War saved Spider-Man again because a lot of people liked Andrew Garfield and what he was doing, but they forgot about him like that once that Civil War scene came in, and a lot of it had to do with Marvel. So I don't think it's that easy.
I'm not discounting how well Marvel helped.
No, but I'm just saying I don't think it's that easy in the deal where it's just like we're going to put him in a couple Marvel movies, and then afterwards he's gone, he's yours again. I don't buy it.
I think it actually is that cut and dry, but I think that's actually kind of smart on Marvel's side too, because remember, Marvel signs a deal and they're also thinking, look, we may not have any more plans for Spider-Man after we have 5 Spider-Man films in which Spider-Man appears in. Like for them, they probably wanted to protect themselves as well. What I find is the most interesting part of this deal is that Sony's rights to Spider-Man are all contingent on them making sure a Spider-Man movie is in production every X number of years. As long as Sony has a Spider-Man film in production every X number of years, and I don't know the exact numbers of years that is, they get to keep the rights to Spider-Man. By doing this deal with Sony, Marvel is helping Sony keep the rights to Spider-Man.
Right.
Because this Spider-Man Homecoming film counts against that clock. The next Spider-Man film is going to count against that clock. So the interesting thing here is that by doing this deal, Marvel is actually helping Sony keep the rights. But they obviously see a big amount of upside to this as well with Spider-Man coming into the MCU, with Spider-Man being a part of the Avengers when that all comes. But I think maybe both sides just wanted to make sure they had a protection. They didn't want to oversign. They didn't want to sign that $100 million, 15-year A-Rod kind of deal. They wanted to make sure that they had outs, that they had some protection. But again, when it comes down to it, I think Sony and Marvel are both going to look at each other across the table and go, and there's going to be hard negotiations, but they're both going to say up front, look, Spider-Man being in the MCU is good for us, and it's good for you. And they're going to find a way to keep it going.
I mean, look, I'm not a huge book reader, okay? But I would love to I'd love to take a look at this contract, and I probably can because I'm sure there's going to be an email leak about it in 2 weeks. I want to read this contract because I want to see who does have the upper hand when it comes to negotiating, or who has the first rights to Spider-Man, because obviously Sony retains the rights to the character, but I wonder if there's a clause in there where Marvel can say, hey, we want to re-up with this character, and we have the right to do that. So I'm not a big legal person, but I would love to read this contract.
All right, lots of stuff to come, and there's a few other like little wrinkles in this. Like, what about Pepper Potts? I got a feeling we're going to get to that in the Twitter questions. But for now, let's move on. What's up next?
The first trailer and poster have been released for the much-anticipated adaptation of Stephen King's classic novel, It. When children begin to disappear in the town of Derry, Maine, a group of young kids are faced with their biggest fears when they square off against an evil clown named Pennywise, whose history of murder and violence dates back for centuries. Directed by Mama's Andreas Muschietti, the movie stars Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, along with Midnight Special's Jaden Lieberher and Stranger Things film Finn Wolfhard. The movie is set to hit theaters on September 8th later this year. Mark, what do you think of the new poster and trailer for It?
Well, let's talk about the... Are you watching the trailer live?
No, it came up.
As we got this news that the trailer was going to drop, and so I was like, oh, sweet. And I was in line getting my morning coffee at Hooters, and I looked at the poster on my phone, and I was just like this. And so I saw it, and I was like, oh, that's cool, the balloon, the cement. And then I made it bigger, and I was like, oh, you can actually see his face in the balloon. That's a sweet poster. Then the trailer dropped, and I loved it. I mean, we saw a lot of Pennywise. We got to see Pennywise in action at the end. And yes, a lot of Pennywise is like maybe 15 seconds worth, but it's an interesting spin on the original source material because it doesn't appear that these kids are going to become adults in this movie like it did in the novel or it did in the previous adaptation, which is fine with me. If this helped inspire Stranger Things to some degree, then Stranger Things can help inspire the new It to some degree, and I'm totally fine with it. I like what I saw. It looks scary. It looks intense. It looks faithful enough to the original that hardcore fans of Stephen King's novel are going to love it. I think it might bring in new fans as well who just want to eat a lot of popcorn and be terrified of Ronald McDonald.
You know, as somebody who's been a little skeptical about the project and the movie, and honestly, I still am skeptical
Rightfully so.
about the movie, this poster and this trailer are outstanding. The poster, first of all, it says it all in one frame. I love posters that do that, that kind of communicate the whole spirit of the movie in one frame. And that, to me, does it. That is a beautiful, wonderfully conceived poster. I dig it, both from a symbolic point of view and just a literal translation point of view. I think it's great. And the trailer, I came walking out of my office while Wendy and Natasha were sitting down at the table watching it, and I wish I had my phone on me, because the look on, I was standing on this side of the laptop, they were facing this way, and all I could see was their faces like this, and I just wish I had my camera. But it is a creepy trailer. It's clearly just part one of what was in the television miniseries, so clearly they're going to do more after this, provided it does okay. I thought the trailer was great. The poster's great. Color me very, very impressed. What about you?
I'm with you guys. I thought it was amazing. I loved the original television movie when it was out, and it was. And I always felt. I think a lot of people felt this. The first half was great. Second half was okay. I loved the adult stuff. Obviously, the actors, John Ritter and everybody that was in the movie, but the second half kind of fell off. What you just said, maybe they will make a sequel with them as adults. Maybe that's what the sequel is with them later on. I think that's actually a really great idea. I hadn't even thought about that. The poster, though, is brilliant. It's one of, if we were doing something like, what are your favorite posters of the year? It's probably my favorite poster of the year.
Yeah,
for
that would be going on my wall.
It's great. When you look at it at first, and you see the balloon, you say, oh, it, and then when you, oh, wait a minute. Oh, Pennywise is behind there, and this kid is staring up at it. Like, it's terrifying in the best way possible. The only thing, it's not a concern, I'm just curious about, because they seem to be there's a little bit of a difference from, obviously, the television movie. Tim Curry had a bit of humor to him also, almost had like that kind of Freddy thing that he had. There was the way that he played it. There was this humorous bit of the clown. Is it just going to be a straight-up terrifying clown and getting rid of any of the humor, which I'd be okay with, whatever the representation of Pennywise is this time around. But I agree. I saw the Stranger Things kind of influence in there. Obviously, this came first, but still, it probably definitely influenced. You have a cast member from the damn show in there. But I'm loving it, man. I love what I'm seeing so far. I can't wait to see it. And it's a good release date. September 8th is normally when you get some garbage right there. So maybe you get a nice bit of a really good horror film.
I want to go over, because I mentioned I saw you guys watching. Wendy, what did you think about the trailer?
Oh, it brought me back to my mom actually showed the TV series to me when I was younger. She was like, oh, you can enjoy it. It's great. And afterwards,
It's got a
I
clown.
was terrified of
She's
clowns.
3.
And I was like, well, I never asked for a clown for my birthday. That's for sure. She just saved herself a lot of money on birthday parties. No, I liked it. I really didn't think Pennywise actually looked as scary as I thought it would be. I thought the Tim Curry version was scarier, but the last bit of him, the last bit scare in the final scene of the trailer, I was like, okay, that's it right there. But I was like, Dasha, this is so, when the red balloon went by, I couldn't deal. I was like, this is all coming back. My childhood, all the fears, it came back, and I don't like clowns, so.
Natasha, what about you?
So scary. I'm just here shaking my head like no to the whole movie. You know, I was super young when the original came out, so I don't really remember watching it, but I do remember the scene when the little boat goes by in the drain and then you see the clown. And it did bring me back, and I thought, I remember being afraid of sewer drains and thinking that I would see something just from, you know, the movie being so iconic. So definitely this teaser sucked me right in from the beginning. I think all clowns are scary, so I think it was actually scarier than the original from my memory. And I'm super into seeing the actor from Stranger Things in this. I think it's going to be really cool.
And you know, John, Wendy brought up birthday parties. Surprisingly, Pennywise, very affordable rate for your kid's birthday party. He's a famous clown, but it's not that expensive.
And it's funny because as I was walking by the board table where they were watching it, I don't know what point of the trailer they're at, but while Wendy's face was like, like Natasha, it was funny because I'm walking by Natasha just shaking her going, nope.
Yeah, the whole time I'm like,
I do
no.
this thing where I try to tunnel vision myself. Like I watch it like this because it's going to make it less scarier when I do this. I don't know.
All right, guys,
Yeah.
we reached that part of the show now for buy or sell. Here's how this works. In front of her, Natasha's got a few other items in the world of movie news. She's going to run them down. And those of us at the table are simply going to say whether we buy it or sell it. So, Natasha, what do we got?
Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson hit Las Vegas for CinemaCon to show an exclusive clip from his upcoming Jumanji movie, revealing some new plot details as well as the new title for the movie, Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. In addition to the title reveal, the footage shown revealed more on the plot, in which we learned that instead of a board game, a video game serves as the portal, with the teenagers taking on avatars in the game's jungle world, played by The Rock, Jack Black, Kevin Hart, and Karen Gillan. Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle hits theaters on December 22nd. Kristian, buy or sell the new title and plot details for Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle.
I'll buy the plot details because I do like the idea. I do like the idea that these avatars, because that's what we were concerned about at first. And then even when those first images came out, I was like, oh, why is everyone dressed like this? And what is that all about? Oh, okay, that makes sense. We kind of knew that. They had hinted at that. And I like the release date. I think that for a family movie for around that time, I think that it's a good time to do it, and I like that they're not redoing it. They're doing it in a different way, so it could be fun. And The Rock and Kevin Hart do a very good chemistry, so I'm curious to see how this happens. As far as the title goes, I'm going to sell the title. I think Welcome to the Jungle, it's just like the song's been used in every movie possible. It's like it's not very creative. It's just like someone was listening to Guns N' Roses, like, that works, throw it in there. And there's no thought behind it. So the title itself, I feel like there's been tons of movies that have used the title. I feel like there's tons of movies that have used the song. But the plot, I'm actually pretty excited for.
I remember when I was at CinemaCon and The Rock showed up and came out on stage and announced that he was going to be Black Adam. That was like 18 years ago. So I don't know. Anyway, I feel a lot of similarities between how I feel about this movie as I did about Power Rangers. Because, I was really skeptical about them doing another Power Rangers. But I said, but I guess if they did this and this and this, you could have something. And they ended up doing it. I felt the same way about Jumanji. I never really understood any need to go back and to do another Jumanji movie or reboot or reimagining, however they want to phrase it. But you know what? The way they seem to be going about it, I got to think to myself, I guess if you did it that way, that's probably the best way you could approach it. So I do like the whole way they seem to be going. I like the synopsis that we're hearing so far. And I got to admit, I even like the title, if only for the reason that I think the title clears up some confusion, because I think there are a lot of people out there who are still like, so is this a remake of the original Jumanji? Is this a whatever? I think the title definitively says this is a different take on Jumanji. This is something completely different. So while I'm still not sure what I feel about the movie coming out and all, I do like what I see, so I'm going to buy it.
I mean, I would have gone with Jumanji Rocket Queen. I think that's a much harder-hitting title. I like the plot synopsis. I like that it sets it up because it does clearly let us know that this is in the same universe where the first movie took place, and it does open up a world of possibilities for future sequels that are also Guns N' Roses titles. Who would not see Jumanji Live and Let Die? Who would not see Jumanji Paradise? Who would not see Jumanji Get in the Ring? Those are good movies, John. We got a franchise on our hands.
The Beatles actually did Live and Let Die.
No, they didn't.
Paul McCartney, didn't he?
Sorry.
All right, now Jack and listen, Natasha. What's next?
According to an exclusive report from Splash Report and Kelvin Chavez, Adi Shankar, the producer known for both his big screen outings and his online bootleg shorts, is on the shortlist of directors up for the Venom spinoff at Sony. Shankar is just one of the directors mentioned, with the report stressing that he is being considered along with other directors for the job. Pain and Gain writer Scott Rosenberg, along with Amazing Spider-Man 2, Jeff Pinker, will pen the script for the film, with a release date set for October 5th, 2018. John Buyer sell Adi Shankar possibly directing the Venom spinoff.
Uh-oh.
I guess not.
Wow. The headline reads, Collider Heroes guest up for directing thing. Look, actually, I like Adi. We had a chance. We had Adi Shankar on Heroes, and it was one of the most notorious episodes of Heroes that we ever did.
Infamous.
But speaking to him off camera, he's actually a pretty cool dude and has some really cool vision, and is like really loves the art and loves the industry and all that kind of stuff. And I like him. So I should address two things. Number one, I don't know how reliable this story is. I don't know that I even believe it. But just for a moment, let's assume that the story's valid. And Adi Shankar is actually one of the guys being looked at to direct a Venom movie. Adi Shankar, who hasn't directed anything, really. I have been defending Sony's and their position of making a standalone spin-off universe. I'm one of the defenders. I think there's upside. I think it could be horrible, could absolutely be horrible, but I think there's potential upside, and they should be doing it. Any goodwill I have towards Sony and their universe will go flying out the frickin' window immediately. I'm already concerned about hearing that the writer... I like The Amazing Spider-Man 1 with Andrew Garfield. I think that was a wonderful movie. But number 2, not so much. It already concerns me that they had the screenwriter from number 2 on to this thing. If they bring on Adi Shankar, my entire position on this standalone Sony Spider-Man universe thing will completely do a 180. I will completely go from being, yeah, it's worth a roll of the dice, to, oh my God, what the hell are they doing? Because if this is true, and I don't believe that this is true, but if Sony was actually seriously considering Adi to be the director of a Venom movie, I'm out. I think I'm just completely out. Kristian, what do you think?
I'm a little bit on the other side. I think that what I will say is I'm against the standalone movies outside the MCU right now. I talked about that the other day. I think it's too confusing right now, too early, but we'll see what happens in a couple of years. I don't like shortlist stories. I just don't. I never, because someone says, oh, well, he was on there. Well, how come it wasn't reported? Oh, he got dropped off. It's like shortlist stories of some anybody. Mark Ellis was on there, was he? Yeah, but he's not on there anymore. But he was great. But let's say it's all legit. And Adi Shankar, I know you and I are on a very different page here. I loved the Power Rangers thing that he did. I loved it. I thought it was a really well done 20-minute film or 30-minute film. And I think he's talented. I think that there's certain times that I think he should be directing and maybe not talking about certain things, but as far as the director goes, he's a good director. He's done some fun stuff, and if he has a good take on it, and they think that the vision, I was really kind of blown away by that.
Just so you know, Adi did not direct that.
He didn't direct it?
No, he did not direct that. He was involved in it as a producer of it. No, he was a producer on it.
Oh, well, sell it.
Back on the short list, ladies and gentlemen.
That's why I was buying it. I was buying it because I thought he directed it. I had no idea. He hasn't directed anything. They're just going to give him Venom?
As far as I know, Joseph Kahn directed the actual.
Really?
Yeah, but and Adi produced.
And the Punisher thing too. He didn't direct that.
No, he did not direct that either.
Okay, then I'm confused.
I directed both of those shorts. I'm gonna have to sell it for right now. I do like the trend in Hollywood that we're not such resume hounds anymore. That you need to have done X, Y, and Z in order to get a big budget movie. Because we've proven in the last 5 or 10 years that you can take somebody who's made a smaller film that not a lot of people noticed, and that alone can pluck you from relative obscurity into getting your shot. And a lot of times, directors have taken that opportunity and ran with it. So I'd be all for Adi Shankar if he does a great job with Venom. Of course, with that screenshot, I buy him more playing Venom than actually directing the movie. I just can't get excited about it yet because I haven't seen enough from him. But more so what concerns me, I echo your thoughts, John, is that if you're giving me this team behind the camera, it's nothing to get me out of bed in the morning, particularly with a property that has already been kind of ruined in the public's eyes by Spider-Man 3. So whatever you want about that movie, Venom was a huge disappointment for big fans like me. So if you're going to make a Venom movie, you damn well better do it right, and you better have a team that's going to take care of that.
Well, here's what's also concerning about that, more on your side, is that Sony, then now, let's say that they have control of this. They have control of this universe, and they can do what they want. If they bring in a guy like Adi to do this, they're going to basically give him the Fox treatment. They're not going to say, oh, do whatever you want. Have fun. You have creative control here. Go and do your thing. He is going to be a puppet on strings. I mean, especially when you've directed basically nothing.
Yeah.
So Sony will be directing the movie. He won't.
I can't help but suspect, though, that within, like I said, I don't necessarily buy into the story at all. But I can't help but suspect that maybe within that story there's a grain of truth, and maybe it's being misunderstood. Maybe Sony's looking at him to be one of the producers of the film. That would make a lot more sense, and I would actually then find that intriguing because he's got a different way of looking at things that could bring something really cool to a Venom story. As a producer, I just don't want him directing.
But if you are Sony, you should be watching Collider Heroes because occasionally directors pop up on that show.
Yes, indeed they do. All right, what's next?
The first trailer for A Ghost Story has landed online, reuniting the Eighth Embodied Saints trio of Rooney Mara, Casey Affleck, and director David Lowery. A Ghost Story follows Mara, a grieving widow who is followed by the ghost of her husband, played by Affleck. The ghost, donning a white sheet with 2 holes for eyes, tries to reconnect with his loved ones as time goes by. The movie premiered at the Sundance Film Festival to critical acclaim and was quickly acquired by A24. It's set for a release this summer on July 7th. Christian Byer saw the first trailer for A Ghost Story.
I'll buy it. I don't know what the hell's going on in it, but I'm definitely buying it. It's a bizarre movie. I like everyone that's involved. I like what A24 has been doing as a company overall. I did hear the word of mouth about the praise that it was getting. Casey Affleck's coming off of Manchester by the Sea. This could be it's like as long as Whoopi Goldberg doesn't show up for the sequel, then we're good to go. But I think that it's interesting. I don't know what it's about, but I'm on board.
I have heard really good things about this movie, like really solid good things about this movie coming out of the festival. You look at the talent involved, the reigning defending best actor at the Academy Awards. You got Rooney Mara, who was nominated for Academy Award. This trailer sucks.
Really?
This is terrible. Look, seriously, because if you took away everything I'm hearing about it from the festivals and just say, hey, here's a trailer for an upcoming movie, you interested in seeing this movie? I'd go, hell no.
Even with the cast.
The cast doesn't make the story.
Yeah.
I mean, you just know they're going to give you a good performance.
Yeah.
But this is a poorly put together trailer. This is a poorly put together trailer. It did nothing for me to get me more excited because I'm already excited about seeing it because I've talked to people who I know and I trust who have seen it and they loved it. So I'm excited for the movie. And I agree with you. I think A24 has been doing some really cool things as one of these scrappy little upstart companies that's been around for a little while now. But they botched the trailer. They completely botched the trailer. I don't think anybody who doesn't know anything about the word of mouth coming out of the film festival just watch this trailer. There's something going to be marking down on their calendars when they want to run out and see it. I don't know. What do you think?
Your bait and switch game is on point today. Because it comes to you and you're like, I'm John Campea. I'm a nice Canadian. I donated at the soup kitchen this morning. This trailer sucked. It's like, wow. I don't think this trailer sucked. I was intrigued by it, but I have no idea. Like, this is one of those movies. I know it's going to be one of those situations because I agree with Christian. I like what the studio A24 has been cranking out recently. It's been nothing but good stuff. I'm going to want this movie. You're going to have to pull my teeth to get me into this movie because it's just going to be like, all right, fine, let's go explore a poem on tape. It's going to be like watching a Terrence Malick movie where I might get something out of it, but it's going to be a long walk to that water. Now, I've had feelings about the movies going in very similar to that. One of those was last year, and it was called La La Land, and I ended up loving the movie and skipping out of the theater. I don't think it's going to be the case with The Ghost Story, but it intrigues me enough, given the talent involved, and maybe I just like ghosts. I'm going to buy the trailer, but it wasn't like, I'm not like, oh, this is going to be the movie of the year. It's like, fine, I got to go watch this. Okay.
All right, what's next?
It's been revealed through an interview with ComicBook.com at the ongoing CinemaCon in Las Vegas that prolific screenwriter Aaron Sorkin has some meetings lined up with both Marvel and DC to discuss possibly working together on an upcoming project. I happen to have meetings coming up with both DC and Marvel. I have to go into these meetings and tell them as respectfully as I can that I've never read a comic book. It's not that I don't like them, it's just I've never been exposed to one. So I'm hoping that somewhere in their library is a comic book character that I'm going to love love, and I'm going to want to go back and start reading from the first issue on. Mark, would you buy or sell either DC or Marvel movie written by Aaron Sorkin?
I don't really care about it. I know everybody loves Aaron Sorkin to death. I think he said some really dumb. Every time I hear something come out of the guy's mouth, he just seems like he's a little bit better than everybody else. If you want to come off your ivory tower and read a comic book and get invested in a character, fine. I don't need an Aaron Sorkin movie, so this may be the most unpopular opinion you've ever heard. I'm going to sell him ever doing a DC or Marvel movie because I don't care about it. We have plenty of people that are right for those jobs, more so than Aaron Sorkin. He can just write another walk and talk movie for all I care.
I would insanely buy this. He's might be the best in the world right now. This is his recent resume, okay? Steve Jobs, The Newsroom, which I thought was a brilliantly written show. Moneyball, Social Network, Charlie Wilson's War. He wrote The West Wing, of course. He wrote A Few Good Men. Look, I've always said before, it's never a mistake to add talent. You want to take a guy who knows how to develop characters and create subplots and create great tension on screen, create great believable conflict, whatever. You're talking about one of the best writers in the world. Is he a bit of a dick off camera? Maybe. Maybe he's a bit of a dick when just in real and personal life. I don't give two craps. The guy's a great writer. You bring a guy like this on board to either Marvel or DC, then you dangle a character in front of him that gets his attention and gets him to like a particular character. Then you give him a year to just develop a story around that thing. You are looking at possibly one of the top 3 or 4 best written, at any rate, comic book movies ever made. I don't care if it's DC or Marvel. And so as a fan of all comic book films, be they DC or Marvel, I desperately want to hear that one of these two companies get this guy on board. Now, you know what's happening right now. It's Marvel and DC. It's not even going to be a bidding war. It's not going to be about money. Right now, you got Marvel and DC making pitches to this guy, dangling characters in front of him to try to get him allured into one of them. And whichever one he goes with, I think you're looking at the next great franchise. Maybe you're underselling it. Maybe I'm overselling it. Break this tie.
Well, like my grandmother used to say, Mark, your head's broken, kid.
My head is fine.
This is a big buy. I mean, I think DC has the better shot of getting him.
I actually agree. I think they do.
Because I think DC is in a place where we're just like, if you get the same reason that you're going after someone like a Mel Gibson, you're going after someone like Aaron Sorkin, you say, it's Aaron Sorkin. We're gonna give him this character with Black Adam maybe, and you give him this character. He goes on, he does it, and he's got his version of it, and you let him go. You're like, it's Sorkin. Marvel doesn't really have the luxury of doing that because there's certain ways that they have already all this connected tissue with their cinematic universe that it's harder if Sorkin says, well, I want to kind of maneuver and do this. And you get into an Edgar Wright situation to where Edgar Wright wanted to do what Edgar Wright wants to do because that's how he writes stuff. And Edgar Wright, to his credit, already was connected to Ant-Man way before the MCU. So it just was a strange pairing at that point. DC can afford to let him go because it's such a young cinematic universe. If he wants to veer off a little bit, all right, Sorkin wants to change that, we can afford to do that. I think DC's going to get him. I think that they should get him. And I loved his comments. And the fact is, like, oh, I'm going to have to tell him, no, you're not, because you just told him in this press interview that exactly now they know that you don't read comics, and I bet you that they assumed it from the get-go. They don't care that you haven't read comics, but he'll do the research. He'll get great characters. His writing is fantastic. I loved Steve Jobs. I loved it. I thought it was so brilliantly written. What he does is going to be great, and I want him to be a bit of a dick if he's going to have, if he's going to put that flair into character. If it is from Marvel, maybe he'll give us a more in-depth villain. Maybe we've got a really good written villain this time around. So I'm all for Steve Jobs. I'm all for Sorkin writing one of these movies. I hope that he does it, and I hope it happens.
Wouldn't you just rather see him do something else that he's more comfortable doing as opposed to having to squeeze what he wants to do into a shared universe? Because you can say the DCU is younger. It's also really struggling to find its footing. I don't think Aaron Sorkin is going to be the guy that you lean on to do all these movies going forward.
I disagree.
He's going to write a movie. He's not going to want to write 10 comic book movies.
Maybe not, but he could give you.
He set the direction.
He sets the direction, exactly. The fact that if he gives you a certain way to go and a certain way to follow, that the rest of these writers and directors, because to DC's credit, they're going after some heavy-hitting directors and writers to try to right the ship. And this is a way to do it. I think it's brilliant. I think that DC would benefit from him a lot more than Marvel. I don't think Marvel needs him. I think DC needs him. I think DC needs him to write, because if you can get the DC cinematic universe, no matter what you think, whether you love Batman v Superman, whether you hate it, it hasn't had a movie yet that that has been said, wait a minute, that's a Dark Knight type writing. That's a type of guy that can get you the Dark Knight type writing of a movie. That's the type of guy that can make you look at like the type of attention. The answer to your question is why you need him for this, because the kind of attention you get from an Aaron Sorkin writing your movie is a lot different, even than it is from like a Mel Gibson, obviously with the baggage that he's had, or even if it's from someone else who's the Russo brothers who came from comedy. It was a nice move, but it's not Aaron Sorkin, who is a brilliant Oscar-nominated winning writer. You know?
Yeah. And, you know, for anybody who might be concerned about the whole thing about him saying, I haven't really read comic books, don't worry about that for a second. He didn't personally know Steve Jobs. He didn't personally know all the people behind the Social Network. He didn't personally know everybody behind Moneyball. He researches, he finds out everything there is to know, he finds the angle, and then he writes it. And he's done a magnificent job at that. So I would have no fears whatsoever, because he's proven he gets himself acquainted with the subject matter first, and once he totally knows it, then he goes into it. By the time he puts pen to paper on either a Marvel film or a DC film, he's going to know that character as well as anybody else in the world. So I don't think there's anything to worry about on that mark, but we'll see how that turns out. All right, guys, listen, I want to remind you that this is not the only show on Collider Video today. We've got a few other things going on. Of course, yesterday, a brand new episode of John Schnepp and his crew with Heroes, a brand new episode of that dropped. Also, keep your eyes open. Yesterday, we recorded a commentary for Rogue One. We're going to drop that in the next week or so. Keep your eyes open for that. And, of course, a brand new episode of Awesome Tacular drops every Friday. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Also, since we do this show live, at the end of the show, we're going to save a little bit of time to take some of your live Twitter questions. Just make sure you're following us on Twitter at Collider Video. Start firing us some questions, and then Wendy will pick a few out to address to us. But for now, let's go to the mailbag. If you've got a topic or something else you'd like us to talk about here on the show, just write it on into us at collidervideo@gmail.com. We pick a couple questions out throughout the week here on Movie Talk. We also pick a bunch out for mailbag on Saturdays and Sundays. Natasha, what do we got?
Chanel writes, hey Collider Gang, do actors get paid for forthcoming projects or get some kind of sign or bonus? There are many actors who seem to be in limbo concerning movies they signed up for, Channing Tatum's Gambit, Joe Manganiello's Deathstroke, Ezra Miller's Flash, etc. I've been wondering about this ever since finding out that Shailene Woodley was supposed to play Mary Jane in the now defunct third Spider-Man.
Every contract is unique. Basically, no, you got to make the movie before you get paid anything. So that's the thing. Even but Shailene Woodley's a little bit different because she actually showed up to set and did the work. So she shot her scene, so I'm sure she got paid. Now, there's something in Hollywood called pay-for-play contracts, which you're familiar with if you know the Animaniacs opening theme song. And what that basically is, Tim Burton had a notorious one for his Superman movie. Remember, Tim Burton was going to direct the Superman movie that John Schnepp did a documentary about.
Yeah, The Death of Superman Lives. What happened?
Yes, it was called The Death of Superman Lives was the name of the movie, and Tim Burton signed one of these pay-for-play contracts, and that means he got paid even though the movie didn't get made. Now, I'm sure there are some actors who get that same type of a deal, but I think the general thing is, no, you sign a contract, that's great, and maybe there's a little signing bonus in there, maybe, I don't know, but you got to make the movie in order to get paid. And in a situation like Terrence Howard, who had a three-film contract deal with Marvel to be War Machine. He only made one. Just because you got a 3-film deal doesn't mean the studio has to use you for three films. It just means you have to appear if they want you to appear, and thus you only got paid for one film. So I don't know. How would you guys address this question?
No, I agree with you. I think it's just a matter of contract. I think it's a matter of, certain stars. I bet you Channing Tatum did for Gambit because of the way that weird contract and that thing was happening and the way that he was kind of producing on. I think that's another thing is like if it gets announced, if it gets greenlit, maybe you get a particular deal. Like you said, every deal is different, so you never really know.
Retainer. Affleck, Good Will Hunting. I think with newer talent, especially in the world of TV, you can get what's called a holding deal, which is where a certain network, like say Fox or NBC, really wants you to be in a show. They just don't know what the show is. They will pay you to create a show, and you get paid whether or not that show gets created ultimately or not. They're basically investing money in you to say, we think this is going to come back and pay dividends for us. With somebody like particular director who's doing a lot of pre-production, like what Tim Burton was doing, you should get paid for that. Or even if you get cast as Star-Lord, say, let's say that Chris Pratt was cast, but they didn't end up using him. He's doing a lot of pre-production work before that thing ever gets shot. He's in the gym every day. He's got to watch his diet. He's learning his lines. You should get something. I'm sure that these big-name talents have agents agreements that lock down some amount of retainer for them, regardless of whether the project actually goes into production.
Now, there could also be something with the actors that, like with writers, there are things called options. I actually made a little bit of money on writing scripts that got optioned that never got made anything. So what happens is I wrote a story. There's a studio that was interested in it, and they bought an option on it. All that meant was that for, like, I think at the time, for 1 year, I couldn't shop that script to anybody else. They paid me a fee just to hold on to the rights for it. And then if they decided to make the film, I would get additional money. And if not, then no big deal. It comes back to me. So maybe in the world of actors, that exists as well. It's like, okay, here, Chris Evans, we want to sign you to 5 Captain America films. We are going to pay you an X amount just to keep your schedule open for it, to be ready to go and make it in case you do make it. And then if you actually do make it, then you get this amount of money. So it's maybe something like that as well.
Kind of like going to the doctor's office, where if you cancel your appointment within 24 hours, you still got to pay for it. Sorry.
All right, guys, so I said we'd save some time for your live Twitter questions, and we're going to do that right now. Wendy, what have you picked out?
The first one comes from Isa Mike, who writes, who has final say of what is shown during a trailer, the studio or the director?
Studio. 100% always the studio.
Yeah.
There are very, very micro-finite examples where the studio will allow the director to do it, but it's the studio's money. They have final say in everything.
95%, because you also...
You say 95 as opposed to 98?
Yes, Scorsese and...
We're going to fight over 3?
Yes, because Scorsese and Tarantino, I mean, guys like that,
Yeah.
they're certain, like, going back to what we were just talking about, certain deals up top, final say, final trailer cuts. There are deals like that.
Yeah.
But 9 out of 10 times.
They're rare.
And somewhere there's one craft services guy that just has control over everything. He's slicing meat. Do it again. Didn't like it.
Yeah, remember, for the most part, like, trailers are being cut and put together long before we really see them for the first time. They're being made while the director is still, turning their attention to directing a movie and putting it together and edit and all that kind of stuff to not be worried. And then the studios have marketing professionals that really worry about the trailers for the most part. There are exceptions, absolutely, but for the most part, it's the studio.
It really boils down to who has the keys to the editing room. Is it at a studio? Because you always hear stories about directors getting, I'm locked out of my own editing room. Well, it's at a studio. Tough crap.
All right, what's next?
This one comes from Fame Dalla, who writes, what about a Beetlejuice remake starring Johnny Depp?
Oh, God.
No.
I don't like going after fans like this.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. No.
No.
The answer's no. Sorry. Thanks for playing.
All right, what's next?
Well, moving on, and speaking of Johnny Depp, Mr. Yasman300 writes, thoughts of the new Pirates movie getting a positive reaction at CinemaCon?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look,
They screen the whole thing?
they screened the whole movie, though.
As long as you didn't play Beetlejuice in it.
Which was the only reason I considered going to CinemaCon this year, since they were doing a full screening of it. Yeah, I've heard decent things about it. I mean, that's good. It doesn't mean I believe it's going to be great, but it's certainly better than hearing it's bad.
Every trailer is
It's
look good.
encouraging, yeah.
Every
And I
trailer's
like
awesome.
the trailers. So
Well, it's also encouraging that they have the faith to show it.
yes,
I mean, because, anytime a movie comes out on, like, a Friday and then we see it Thursday night, it's scary. But the fact that they're showing it this early, it means they have confidence in it. So that's awesome.
Though I will say this: what was that Kevin James movie where was it just called The Zookeeper?
The Zookeeper.
Yeah,
they
they
made a
also-
sequel, The Zookeeper's Wife.
They they played that at CinemaCon too, and that was awful.
Did it get a good react? Were people running out like, there's talking animals? You're going to love it.
No, it was so funny because we're in the Celine Dion Theater at Caesar's Palace, and like as the movie progressed, just more and more people were leaving, and people were falling asleep. I mean, it was actually the guy was Ray. Ray was with me because he was covering CinemaCon with me. He was sitting right beside me, and he wanted to leave, and the only reason he couldn't leave is because literally the next 3 people in line beside him, the direction he had to go to get out, were sleeping in their chairs, and he couldn't get by them.
Oh, my God.
True story, absolutely 100% true story.
Now I feel bad for that little zookeeper.
All right, what's next?
It'll be all right.
Ross Clark writes, if It is successful, would you want to see other Stephen King classics revisited, such as The Stand and The Shining? Thanks.
Well, I mean, if it flops, I still want to see those movies.
You want to see a remake of The Shining?
Yes.
Didn't they
yes,
do
I
like
would.
the TV show too?
They did. I would stay away from the remake of The Shining. I think because with Coppola and I mean Kubrick and Jack Nicholson, that one you leave alone.
Again, it goes back to my philosophy of sequels or reboots and remakes and all. Who cares? They make another one. If it's good, great. We got another good movie. If it's bad,
I get
we
that
got
philosophy.
The original.
That one. I mean, there's other ones that you could do. I like what they did. I mean, look, they took that 11/22/63. They turned that into a show. There's a lot of Stephen King stuff out there that you can make that you don't have to go back into the stuff. Even though Stephen King didn't love The Shining when it came out, so maybe
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't a fan of it, but
No,
it
he
still
wasn't.
was going to feel like a cash grab if you go after The Shining again. Now Now, something like Salem's Lot, I'd totally be up for a new telling of that. Maybe even give us Christine, give us some horror classic, get John Carpenter to do it. Be fun.
All right, let's take 2 more.
Okay, this one comes from Austin Johnson, who writes, what property do you guys think will best fit Aaron Sorkin in the DCEU? I would like to see him do the Green Lantern Corps.
Well, I mean, Aaron Sorkin doing a Green Lantern Corps would be great. Aaron Sorkin doing
Black Adam.
Black Adam Shazam. I mean, that would be great. I just can't think of anything that Aaron Sorkin's going to do this DC property and going, that's a bad idea. I just can't think of a character where it just wouldn't be a good match.
Yeah, I don't know yet. I mean, I'd like to see the ones that he's considering, and like you said, it's like it's like he says, it's the one that they present in front of him that he goes and he reads a couple of them. And he says, "Oh yeah, I'd like to do this." So I don't know. It's the one that he picks that I'm going to go. All right.
Oh, I am going to pick one. Lobo. I would love to see Sorkin try Lobo. That would be interesting.
If I had to pick one, which I don't, I would go with something that's going to be very standalone from the current DCEU. Not because I love the DCEU so much. I just think Aaron Sorkin is going to play in his own sandbox, and we can have a standalone thing from everything else. So I'd do something from the Vertigo line like Sandman.
All right, last question of the day.
Nobody picked Martian Manhunter?
You could.
Yeah, maybe.
But
All
I
right,
don't
last
like
one comes
Martian
from MK Songbird. Over or under 30% the recent grain of salt rumor being accurate, and Gwyneth Paltrow will appear / cameo in Homecoming.
Yeah, so there's a report coming around literally from a gossip website. And the reason I say literally gossip website because the word gossip is in the title of the website. There is a gossip website that is saying that Gwyneth Paltrow is coming back to play Pepper Potts, and she's going to appear in Spider-Man Homecoming. It's interesting because just this weekend on Mailbag, Josh McCouga and I took a question about what do we think the chances are we'll see Pepper Potts again. We basically said 0 because the last reports I read, she didn't want to do it anymore, and Marvel didn't want her anymore. So, I mean, it seems like it pretty much 0. I think it's under 30% that this happens. But it is absolutely possible, maybe, because Sony's paying the bill for it. And we know that Marvel is very stingy on the purse strings about how much they want to pay their actors, and I'm cool with that. But if Sony decided they wanted Pepper Potts in there and they're willing to put the money to sign her to come in and do it, that's fine. It raises an interesting question, though, about that whole contract that we spent the first part of the show talking about. It's like, well, who would get to say if she gets to come back in? Because remember, Sony may want her back in, but that causes repercussions for Marvel in their future movies. Because, like, hey, we just said in Civil War that they're taking a break. If Sony brings her back in now, are we then obligated to use her again moving forward? Like, if she's back in Tony's life when Avengers comes along, does she need to be there? It just raises some questions. Or if Marvel wanted her back in there, is Sony like, well, we don't want to pay her? It raises interesting questions. But overall, I think it's under 30% that she'll actually appear.
I think it's over. I think that I think this is an interesting way for them to reconnect it because of the amount of time that takes place in between the events of Civil War to Spider-Man to the next Avengers movie. I wouldn't be surprised if she shows up in both those movies. So I'm going to go, not by much, but I'm going to go over.
I don't know why you guys are worrying about the studios and directors and all that stuff. It's Pepper's choice, damn it, okay? She left Tony for a reason. If she wants to come back, that's all on her. I'm going probably still over 30% because Tony went on an emotional journey during Civil War. He rediscovered new things about himself, so maybe now they can have a better relationship. John, I'm not focused on studios and contracts. I'm talking about a relationship between two people that kind of sort of maybe never loved each other.
All right, guys, that'll do it for us for this installment of Movie Talk. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to thank the guys sitting at the table with me over here. Mr. Mark Ellis. Mark, where can people find you?
Schmoes No Live tonight at 7 p.m. Then I'm hopping a flight from Burbank, California to Buffalo, New York. I'll be telling jokes at Helium in Buffalo Thursday and Friday night, then hanging out in Atlanta Saturday night for some reason.
Over here, Mr. Kristian Harloff.
Lots of Schmodown stuff. Obviously, the Power Rangers one that went up. We have the Inner Geekdom 5-way between Jeremy Johns. You've got Jason Inman, Michelle Boyd, Rachel Cushing, and Hal Rudnick. That goes up on Friday. And then we have a Schmodown panel at WonderCon. Oh, I forgot RB3 and Nost also on Friday. But the Schmodown panel is at Anaheim on Sunday, I believe at 2:30. So make sure you check that out. Come by. It's going to be a lot of fun. Going to be a lot of competitors. Roka will be there. JTE, Snyder, John Campea, myself, a bunch of people. It's going to be fun.
And over there, Natasha.
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at NatashaLexis_.
And Wendy Lee.
At the Movie Couple channel on YouTube and on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat at Wendy Lee Zaney.
And you guys can simply follow me on Facebook and on Twitter just at John Campea. That'll do it for us, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. And until next time, bye-bye.
Hey guys, if you like this video, click the thumbs up button. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It'll help you stay up to date with everything we've got going on here at Collider.